Ricardo, welcome. Very cool. Maryland. Got a lot of time zones represented, so thanks for coming here live. Pete, should we kick things off officially
Kick
here?
it off. I think we should kick it off. Let me share my screen. Hey, folks, we got a little presentation we're going to follow along, but there's going to be lots of in-class activity and discussion. So that's going to be super fun. We'll also have some time for you guys to introduce yourselves to each other. We find that just getting to know folks and doing a little bit of networking is one of the big benefits of this class. Because we're all going to be all in this together for a few weeks. And let me go full screen here so that we can all not get distracted by the Chrome. Welcome to the spring cohort of AI for PR and communications. This is a cohort that me and my colleagues have been doing for how long has it been now, Peter? A year and a half? Is this like something like
Number
that?
six, cohort six.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
you guys get the super concentrated, refined version at this point, which it
Versions of
always is
scale.
the best possible class we've done. It's like the latest iPhone is the best iPhone. Well, you've got the best class coming in here.
There's no
So
planned obsolescence, though. The good news is the skills you learn here will still be relevant, even if the tech accelerates as it will, surely, and continues to. But
yeah,
right on.
one of the great things about this course, obviously, it's live, it's not on demand, which is a lot of advantages. Obviously, you can ask questions. There's a lot of group discussion, and we're going to do some breakout rooms. But also, it's very, very up to date. We update this cohort every single time we do it with whatever's new and cool. And this will be one of the first times we dive deeper into agents, which is later in the course. So we're really excited about that because that's obviously been a huge theme of 2026 if you're paying attention to AI. So this is the intro slide. Before we get to the meat of the cohort, we wanted to just tell a little bit about ourselves. So Peter, why don't you kick us off?
Sure thing. Yeah, so my background is as a journalist originally. I have also worked in PR extensively. I have a master's in new media journalism from UC Berkeley and was a freelancer overseas for about 6 years after graduation, based in Mongolia. So did everything from, drone videography to AR and VR production, as well as kind of writing on wire services for Reuters and everything in between. So yeah, I really like getting out and about, and now I'm currently sort of in between worlds here. I stumbled into AI originally through Berkeley, where my master's advisor handed me a syllabus for a summer course called The Future of Visual Storytelling, with a whole unit on AI. And it was like 2019 or so. And I was like, what the hell is AI? What is it doing on here at all? And so thus began sort of, the itch. And at that point, there was no betas to even join. There were no research previews for any of these ChatGPT or other, models. It was so early, but it started getting on my radar, and I kept teaching annually at least one or two courses as an adjunct, and it became more and more of a focus of the course as the tech suddenly got on the scene. And then I met Kris here through a Google News initiative. Accelerator program where he and I were working on very similar things, and met Pete shortly after along the way. But Kris, maybe it's a good time to pass it over to you.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Kris Krüg, and yeah, I've been teaching this course with these guys 6 times. But Peter and I also run another course called the AI Upgrade for Creative Professionals that we've run 8 times over the last 2 years. So we've seen hundreds of people come through these programs. It's been a really awesome way to see like people adapting these tools to like a lot of different use cases across media and comms and PR and journalism. So I have that to offer through our coaching sessions. I play a lot of the background role here, doing a lot of the Notion documentation, the transcripts, the community aspects of this course. We have a page with all the lessons on them and videos and transcripts, and so I maintain those things. I also do a similar role here as like an AI lab tech with the Google News Initiative and with the Lenfest Institute of Journalism. I've got 25 Philadelphia-based journalists and creators in a cohort, a 6-month cohort right now that's just wrapping up in Philly next week. And yeah, I had a show about AI on the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, And yeah, I love this stuff. I'm constantly experimenting and building new things, and you'll see lots of that trickle out during this course.
Sweet. And I am the last person on this slide. I'm Pete Pachal. I founded my company, the Media Copilot, around the same time Peter started teaching courses, and I was actually in one of his very first cohorts, and for creative
He
professionals.
was a great student. We had to bring him in.
Showed up every time and did
That's
all my
right.
homework. So if you do that, you too could be perhaps a presenter. But no, the Media Copilot is also a newsletter. It's a podcast. I do my own sort of custom trainings for various teams, and I've been doing a lot of writing for the newsletter and other outlets about AI and how it's changing media. I've been sort of going down the rabbit hole of GEO lately. I just wanted to mention that here at the outset because I've launching some sort of other events around that, including a dinner series here in New York, in the New York area. If you guys are interested in that, let me know. It's a little beyond the scope of this course. And just as sort of a for laughs on the side, I do a podcast about the show Doctor Who. So if you're into that, I'd love to nerd out with you at some point. But it's also a great outlet for practicing some of the AI stuff that I teach all the time in terms of making my production and my obsession with hobbies like Doctor Who to be a little more efficient, I guess, if that needs efficiency. But I can do more with that. That's me. All right, moving on. We're going to hear from you, by the way, in a few minutes. But first, we wanted to tell you a little bit about the course itself. So this is an outline of each of the lessons that we've customized again exclusively for this cohort and updated. Obviously, we're going to start today with and next week with a couple of foundational classes. So we do things a little differently here. A lot of people want to go right into something that is a very pragmatic, hands-on takeaways. We're going to have takeaways, but they're going to be a little bit more on the ethics and policy kind of side of things, which I think is very important, not just for organizations, but for individuals. It's okay to ask hard questions about AI, not just how to use it, but should you use it in certain situations? We're going to ask a bunch of those questions this week, so get excited. Next week, we're going to go into the more practical foundations, prompting, particularly structured prompting, how to collaborate well with AI, some very specific prompting tips that we get good results from. And we're going to dive into the whole idea of context and then use all of those skills, prompting context, to start building things that you can use again and again in the form of AI assistance. Then in week three, there's some very specific applications and tools that are built into many AI platforms. You've probably heard of deep research. You might have even used it. We're going to show you some really interesting use cases in that realm. We're also going to look at like how AI does a really good job of parsing many, much more documents than any human could actually do, and do it in very, very short order, and how to do that properly. We all kind of know AI can do that, but there are very specific tools for that, and we're going to go over a couple of them. And then we're going to get into some automations and agents in week four. This is really exciting. Once you start using AI more extensively, you start to think, oh, can I offload not just the sort of core task, but even sort of the stuff around the task, the moving of the data from one app to another, and how much autonomy can I give this thing? It turns out quite a lot in today's day and age. We're going to show you how to do that, but also do it with thoughtfulness and with an eye toward safety. And then finally, we're going to get you guys doing something that is been really popular in the last, 6 to 12 months or so, and still growing. And it's vibe coding. And if you've never done it, get ready to be excited. And if you have done it, we're going to show you some interesting apps and interesting ways to get more out of it than just kind of getting sort of one-off projects that are on sort of a remote site somewhere. And then at the end of all this, it's time for you guys to take center stage. So as part of this course, you're tasked with doing a capstone project. And this is something that you're going to design for yourself and your own workflows, applying basically the things you've learned in the course. And you're all going to present something, and it's going to be great because I love the capstone uh, course class because it's basically where I get to learn and get out my notebook because there have been some projects that have really blown us away that our students have put together over the many cohorts we've
In
done.
many cases, they get so far that they exceed our not just expectations, but capabilities. And then we have to go redo their projects ourselves and follow in their footsteps. So it's amazing what's possible once you sort of, yeah, start to unravel the AI world we live in and explore. So it's a really collaborative, yeah, experience. And this leads into coaching. Go for it, Pete.
Yeah, sure. So every one of you is basically as part of the course, you get 2 half-hour coaching sessions with any one of us, and they could be both with the same instructor. You could do them across 2 different instructors, but we're there to be your one-on-one guide to help you with your project, or really just answer and um, explain more about either concepts from the course or even outside of the course for you. So there's 2 sessions. Now, remember, I said there's like a bunch of different things we're doing week to week. One of the big things I want to encourage is don't wait too long to schedule your coaching. In fact, I'd encourage you to schedule your first coaching session now. One, like, it's basically getting your stuff on the calendar early is always a good idea because stuff fills up. But also, like, the first session isn't necessarily, it needs to be like, oh, I know what I'm going to do. Help me do it. It's more, could be more like a focusing in on what you want to do, given all the sort of things you're starting to learn. So don't wait until you've like got exposed to all the concepts in the course before you start scheduling your coaching, because then things will run out quick. Uh, Again, the capstone class is on May 19th, where there's going to be a sign up sheet in the week leading up to it, and we have ways of ensuring a smooth class. Anything to add there, Peter or Chris?
No, just that I dropped the capstone link there on the channel, and it's got both some like generic ideas of kind of small, medium, and large, like simple, intermediate, and complex projects. And then it's also got a link to our YouTube where there's like a couple like little videos of people giving good capstone project presentations, just to give you a feel for the vibes.
Nice. Cool. Really quickly, here's what we're doing today. First, we'd love to hear a little bit from y'all and just maybe introduce yourselves in a couple of minutes each. And then we're going to get into a little bit of one-on-one on AI and what some of the latest trends mean and how they're relevant to you in this course. And then, like I said, we're going to jump into the worlds of AI ethics and AI policy, ask some of those hard questions, and we'll do a couple of exercises around thinking about those hard questions. So before we do that, though, time for class participation. We'd love to learn a little bit more about all you guys. And
And I will set
Peter,
a timer because we do have content and exercises today. So I'll keep us honest. We have, yeah, a fair amount. I'm gonna say 90 seconds.
I'm going to actually stop the share while everyone chats, and I'll resume in a minute. Peter, do you want to start going alphabetical or picking people, or do you want me to?
Uh, I'm happy to. Let's see. I will start with order on my screen. So Michelle, I'm gonna pick on you. You're in Seattle, so you're also my neighbor, apparently.
Yes. Hi. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Michelle. I'm in Seattle. I've been in the PR communications industry for 25 years. I've known Pete because of old school PR reporter tech relationships, and I've followed him and worked with him on and off for quite a long time. I've always been doing PR in the tech industry since a wee one. But I was most recently at Amazon for about 12 years, and a few months ago decided to take a break. And during that time last year, we were definitely ramping up on using AI at the company and within our communications team. But as a director on the team. I was encouraging lots of learning, but I realized I was not doing much of actual use of it myself, hands-on. And so in the last few months that I've been off, I realized, oh shoot, before I get back to working again, I should probably shake the dust off of these skills. And honestly, things have changed so much just even in the last 3, 4, 5 months since I've been off. So I saw Pete's course and I said, oh, I need to sign up for this before I decide to go back to work after the summer. So here I am.
Awesome. Super thrilled to
Welcome.
have you. And I definitely think this is going to be very helpful. Like if you're not moored necessarily to like an enterprise platform through work, you're going to be able to make use of all the things in this class. Not that you can otherwise if you are, but there's a lot of different things we're going to show. And so, a lot of places are like,
Even
oh,
if
it's going
you
to
are,
cost
we
you.
can help you. And we're used
Yeah.
to, yeah, advising and consulting in all of these different ecosystems. So yeah, Microsoft, Google, kind of you name it. Stacy, you're up next.
Nice. Hi everyone. I'm Stacy Sladen. I am typically based in Austin, Texas, but I'm currently in Asheville, North Carolina. We spend time in both places. So I lead PR at Meltwater. It's a B2B SaaS company. I started out in journalism like you, Peter, and then made the quintessential transition to PR. But I'm here because I feel like I'm just really scratching the surface on AI. I really want to be smarter about how to put it to work, not just like, asking it a few questions. So especially when it comes to better prompt writing, making it work for me in a more strategic way, like how do I optimize like our agentic workflows and things like that. So more specifically, I would say how to use AI to stay on top of trends. I'm looking at how to elevate our executive visibility program, excuse me, among a lot of other things. But yeah, just excited to learn alongside you guys.
Awesome. Great to have you, Stacy. By the way, just so it's not weird for anyone, I'm actually going to share my LinkedIn profile in the chat. I'd encourage everyone else to also do that.
That's
We could
so
all
weird
kind
and
of.
inappropriate, Pete. Oh my God. We've only done that every time for the last 5 cohorts. Everyone, please do that too. Connect with one another. I'll drop mine in there too. But yeah, we'll pop them into a bit of a directory so folks can stay in touch. Alexa, you're up next on my screen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alexa Herendorf. I'm the Director of Programs for Israel for my family's foundation, the Herendorf Family Foundation, where I will be focusing on building deeper relationships with our grantees and our scholars, mostly over in Israel, to really be telling their impact stories. I'm actually new to the philanthropy world and even to the PR and communications world because I spent the last 6 years as a marine mammal biologist here in South Florida. I specialized in manatee research and rescue, so very different. But I'm really excited to learn how to use AI really to become a stronger storyteller and then build the professional skills that I need for this new career. And then also really organizational skills, just different systems along those lines that will help me. And then ultimately to hopefully make a difference in the world in philanthropy.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really cool. Manatee search and rescue sounds like the most AI immune job in the world, by the way. So
Yeah, that was a
I
safe
don't think you have
job.
to worry too much about
Exactly.
the replacement going on there. That's really cool. Thanks so
Thank
much for being here. I'll try not to have my Alexa plugged in while when we're chatting with you, so I can don't have to call you Google Home or something.
Yeah,
Little in joke there, mostly for
good
Michelle. But
idea.
anyway, moving on.
Um, Shanahana, what
It's
should I call
actually Anna Shanahan, but it's just come up like this. I'm not sure why. So I'm in New Zealand, in Wellington, New Zealand. So I will be doing this course at 4 a.m. in the morning, apart from the few weeks I'm in Sri Lanka when it's
Oh my
10 p.m. So it'll
goodness.
be some fun times at different hours for me.
You
I
win the
am the head
prize.
of yeah, I am the head of domestic communications at New Zealand Rugby. So we are obviously a national sports organisation, and we try and have a global impact with a really tiny team. And how we can do that obviously is by utilising AI a lot better than we are. I was sort of voluntold to do this one as a little bit of a guinea pig for the rest of the team because we're trying to figure out how we get smarter with less people, as I'm sure many businesses are. And so I do use a lot of AI, but I am very aware that it would be very surface level and there's so much to learn and I could be doing a hell of a lot better. So to take away a lot of lessons and teach my team.
It's amazing. I'm gonna have to send you. I did a rugby story for CNN International in Mongolia years ago. I'm gonna have to send it to you.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
was a blast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
We'll also send you
welcome.
a
Great.
Starbucks card so that you can
Yeah.
make sure you're fueled up every time you
Yeah.
tune in at 4 a.m.
Yep. You're making me feel, yeah, like I'm not up nearly early enough when I start my day. Dan, you are up next.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name's Dan Ferber. I'm in the New York City area. I'm in Jersey City. I have spent about half my career in journalism, specifically magazine journalism, both as a writer for a long time and as an editor. And I'm a science writer and editor, so that's been the space I've played in. And how so the marine manatees, I love that. I was a marine biologist in college for a while. I had that idea. So beautiful. Anyway, nowadays, past 6 years, I've been doing content marketing for Nature and Scientific American at Springer Nature. And I am now out on my own and continuing to work with Scientific American and looking to do other sorts of content marketing, bringing on journalistic skills and storytelling. So that's a little bit about me, and look forward to getting to know you all.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Dan. We're practically neighbors. I'm just over in Maplewood.
Cool.
Awesome. Wonderful to have you here. Sefi, you're next on my screen.
Hi everyone. Nice to see you all. And my name is Sefi Velux, and I'm based in Copenhagen in Denmark. I've worked for the last 12 years in science communications, originally in London, for the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And now I lead communications for an organization called the International Center for Antimicrobial Resistance Solutions, or ICARS, which is essentially supporting low and middle income countries to find solutions for targeting drug-resistant infections. So
Do you
across
guys work in
animal, human.
Mongolia by any chance? Because that is a huge problem. They have the highest rate of, yeah, sort of both prescription and non-prescription sort of abuse of, in particular, all sorts of, yeah, medications that you can get over the counter that you probably shouldn't for everything from, yeah, antibiotics.
Yeah, the story, I mean, we don't work in Mongolia, but we have a long-running project in Kyrgyzstan, maybe a similar kind of setting,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
there's a lot of people buying antibiotics for a cold.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really interesting work, and we're a tiny team. So I lead a team, but it's only three of us. So I'm keen to use AI to try and automate some of our very manual processes. I went on a maternity leave at the moment that everyone embraced ChatGPT, and I came back skeptical. So I feel like I need to catch up on where everyone else is at and learn some new tools.
You came to the right place. We'll catch you up and we'll
In the
throw
right
so
place.
many tools at you. You'll have the biggest toolbox of everyone there.
Yep, definitely. Congratulations, by the way. Yeah. Stephanie, up next.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie. I'm the internal communications manager at Meltwater. It's a media intelligence company that helps organizations monitor, understand, and act on information from news, social media, and just across the whole digital landscape. I joined this course because a big part of my role is creating content and driving engagement, most importantly. So just want to better understand how to use AI to do that more effectively. So yeah, just excited to learn more.
Nice.
Amazing. Great to have you here. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Meltwater intimately in, in this cohort. Awesome. Thanks for the intro. Ricardo, where in Brazil are you?
Yeah. Hi guys, good afternoon. I live in Belo Horizonte. It's a city in the hills. I live here for 20 years, but I was born in Rio, which of course you all know. I've been working now with BHP for 7 years. So I'm a principal corporate affairs in Brazil. We have not sure if everyone here is aware, but BHP has different sort of work in Brazil. We just support crisis after it happens. So we don't mind here. We don't have operations, but we have a very tough challenge. That's why I do mostly media and digital work. So we have a very big challenge in monitoring things and reporting a lot to Australia. So a great deal of my work is actually reporting. So I've been trying over this past couple of months to dive in AI as much as I can. It's already part of my job, but not as much as I want to. I want it to be more part of my job than it is now. And I've also been trying to do a couple of different things using AI. And the good thing is I have recently figured out that the company as a whole, the global employees are not that advanced with AI techniques as I am. So I'm seeing a good opportunity to be on top of this inside the company.
Great to have you here. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about crisis response, working, internationally here. I'm sure, there's a lot of that. Wonderful to have you here. Welcome. Up next, we have Marilyn.
Hi there. My name is Marilyn Sklar. I work for a unique agency. We are a bi-county government agency. We manage about 60,000 acres of parkland in 2 counties in southern Maryland. Our southern borders are basically adjacent to Washington, D.C. We also provide recreational opportunities for about 2 million citizens. My role with the agency, I've been here about 8 years, and I do internal communications now for our corporate technology office. I do executive communications for the chief information officer and internal communications for about 3,000 employees and how our technology projects impact them. I did 10 years as a journalist and supervising producer with CNN and many years ago, and I have also done communications for museums and nonprofits. I'm here because we are wrapping up in terms of implementation for our first AI training for our employees. I help lead that effort, but I'm really looking also in terms of AI is changing so quickly, and I've been looking at it in terms of getting everyone up to speed in terms of foundational knowledge, but I really have not looked at AI in terms of my area and my skills. And so I'm here to work on that. Thank you.
Nice.
Excellent. Great to have you here. We've worked with a lot of folks in internal and government comms, and there's probably some other folks here with overlapping experiences to all of you. So I do encourage you to make use of connecting with everyone via their LinkedIn profiles there. If you haven't, feel free to. I think last but not least here, Allison is on my screen.
Bringing up the rear. Hi, everybody. My name is Allison Buck. I'm coming to you from Redwood City, CA. I lead the strategic PR team for Samsung Electronics America. I'm coming up on 10 years there and over 20 in the industry. So I'm really happy to be here. I connected with Pete, no surprise, at CES many, many years ago. Early in the days of Media Copilot, Pete did a intro to AI for my team, and even that was probably, I think, 2 years ago, Pete. And I still keep those notes, but AI has changed so much since then. So I'm here, one, just lifelong learner. So I've always, just trying to sort through the fire hose of AI every day, and not even every week, every day. So I'm here to learn more. I am the PR representative of our internal AI task force. So I also hope to develop a little bit of expertise with your all tapping into your expertise. And then the final is today's my birthday, so this is a birthday gift to myself to just keep
Happy
sharp and on
birthday.
top of things. Thank you very much. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah,
Nice. Happy birthday
wonderful.
to you, and fantastic to see you again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice
You'll
emoji storm.
you'll probably see a couple of echoes from that original training from back. Just not a lot, like a lot's changed. There's going to be a lot extra, but I I'd love to hear what you think after next week's class because that's
Hmm.
going to take a little bit of the concepts that I know you have seen and really run with them. So this will be interesting
Awesome.
for you.
Thank you.
And
Thanks.
you are not last nor least. So we have Christian and Samajaha. I'm not sure. Let's go to Christian first.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Christian, and I apologize that I'm currently at the airport traveling home, but I didn't want to miss the live session. Yeah, so I work with a Germany-based, Berlin-based food tech startup. We are a food ingredient startup, and we make recombinant microbial proteins that are bioidentical to cow and dairy proteins. And yeah, I originally only led the public policy and government affairs efforts in the company to take care of like market access topics and regulatory barriers that we have. But then was also asked to take accountability, responsibility for PR and communications. Also because we adapted the size of the company a little bit. So yeah, I have been using obviously the LLMs that we all use to an extent, but I feel there's so much to learn, especially for me, and especially as the company is also looking towards expanding to the US to understand how AI can help in making our company far more visible in new markets as well in a very agile and high impact with low resources fashion, hopefully.
Very cool.
Excellent to meet you. We have one more person with us whose name I'm not sure.
Hey, it's Sarah.
Sarah, hey.
I realized I almost never use Zoom, so I got to update my profile. But what a great group. I love hearing where everybody's from. I am just outside Washington, D.C. in Maryland. I'm an Asianist. I love the New Zealand accent. I worked for Helen Clark at the UN for a number of years. She's the former prime minister. But I was a journalist for many years and then made the leap, I don't know, a decade or so ago, to the UN and World Bank comms system. So I think I've done every possible job in comms. I'm an Asia hand, but I've also done internal, external, speech writing, social, flagship publications, events, all that kind of stuff. But I maxed out on the number of contracts you can have with the UN. And so for the last 8 months or so, I've been consulting and did a business school course, but I'm obsessed with AI. Coming from the world of diplomacy and development, I always look at things through a risk mitigation and management lens first, but I'm also just obsessed with the capacity of what AI can do in this sphere and so many others. So I'm just delighted to meet everybody. Very excited.
Nice. I can
Thanks for introducing
also
yourself, Sarah.
confidently say us too.
For sure. Did I miss anyone? Sorry, I didn't see a couple people earlier on my view here, but going once, going twice. All right. Pete, I think we have a few
Sweet.
slides here and then an
You
activity.
betcha. We're back. All righty. So we're going to move into class. Here we go. First, we're going to talk a little bit about the state of AI here and now in April 2026. Can you believe it? What is going on with AI? Well, before we get into that, I just want to give a little bit of basics. I mean, everyone's used AI. I'm sure everyone's used not even just chat. You've probably done other things with AI. We all kind of know what AI is, but it's good to kind of just level set on a couple of basic concepts, right? And so that we're all kind of approaching this in a similar way. So I think this is a very useful definition of AI. It's actually from an article from a couple of years ago, but I still think it applies really well. it's, software, and the interesting thing about it and what makes it really different from other software, one of the things anyway, is that it's there to make choices for you. And by and large, because all of these AIs have absorbed the entirety of the internet, kind of the entirety of human knowledge, more or less, these decisions that it makes are, yes, informed by the domain expertise that would be required, I guess, for the decision, but it also means you're kind of getting the average of what a person with, qualifications to make the decision, that what they would make. So what that generally means, and again, this is, caveated with a lot of things in terms of model quality and et cetera, which we're going to talk about throughout the class. But what it generally means is that out of the box, if you have a fresh AI, it's going to have more to offer a novice who wants something passable than a professional who wants something good. So, like if you're a professional writer and you want something good and useful out of AI, you're going to have a much higher bar than someone who isn't. And you're going to need to use AI better and in a more sophisticated way. And presumably that's why you're here, because you're all professionals working at your companies in your fields, and you want to, AI can do great things, and you want to make sure they're good enough for your professional work. And what that means obviously varies widely depending on the use case. But that's sort of just a sort of a basic truth about AI. Now, there's been a lot of developments in AI over the last few years. I'm sure you've heard about a bunch of them. But I would say like the biggest change from now versus what AI was like, say, 2 or 3 years ago when it first came on the scene, is that it is now a much, much better collaborator. The AI isn't just outputs anymore. It's not just here, write this thing for me, create this thing for me, do this thing for me. And there are even flaws in even approaching it that way to some extent. But it is a very, very good thought partner. Again, caveated with like what model you choose and all this other stuff. But this is a really big kind of exploding and sort of primary use case now, I would say, with AI. It's obviously made possible by thinking models. Models now have access to better data, and there are much more sort of sophisticated shells or harnesses that you sort of put around AI to aim it with a little more precision at various tasks. I talk, you probably hear a lot about like an AI first mindset when you look around at, people like ourselves who teach AI courses or are thought leaders in the space. What I think this means, or I think a useful definition of this, is when you get into the habit of looping AI into almost any problem you have, really taking advantage of that collaborative aspect to it. So just like it took us a little while when Google was new, we sort of slowly but surely figured out, oh, everything that you could possibly want to know is on the internet and you just got to search for it. So you just Google things now whenever you need to know something. And then that sort of translated into YouTube. If you needed to know how to do something, over time you realized, oh, someone surely made a video about this. And yes, they certainly have, because everything's on YouTube. Well, now with the AI, it's like, oh, you have any specific problem that you may or may not have. AI is there to collaborate with you and walk you through it on a very sort of personal step-by-step and thinking level. So it's really kind of like almost whether it's a recipe you're thinking about, or some professional problem with a client, looping AI into that problem is probably a good idea. It doesn't mean you treat what it says as gospel and you have to do what it says. In fact, we have some very important tips to not get into that sort of AI bias kind of world. But it's a very helpful way to sort of think about having an AI first mindset and problem solving. Caveating all this with a big asterisk, always adhere to your organization's policy, particularly with regard to work tasks, right? So keeping that in mind. So moving on. So I thought it'd be pretty useful to talk a little bit about some of the trends and sort of big topics in AI that have been bouncing around in the last few months. Number one, I would say like you've probably heard a lot about AIs from ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini. There's more than that. There's Grok you might have heard of. There's open source models like DeepSeek. There's things that Meta puts out there that are also open source and some not. But really, like those three models that I mentioned, the ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini, have really kind of pulled ahead of the pack. And even though which one is in front of the pack in any particular month changes all the time, those are really the main models uh, that are really you're going to get the best results from. That said, they're all kind of good at slightly different things. I mean, they're all sort of generally good, and they all sort of generally work the same way. But as you use them, you sort of find that what each one is kind of good at. And there's kind of too much to go into here, but just one example is that Gemini, in terms of image creation and image modification, has gotten extremely good since they came out with a model called Nano Banana in the fall. That's just one example of one sort of specialized skill you might think of for one of these AIs. Certainly, they all offer thinking, or sometimes they're called pro or extended thinking. And again, we'll show you like how to find all that in each of these models. But that's really enabled them to work harder at all the problems you throw at them. And so they've become, again, great collaborators and great for thinking through decisions strategically. And another feature that's really improved how we use these things, if you use them day to day, so if you keep going back to, say, ChatGPT day in and day out with different kinds of queries, over time, it's going to remember more from those interactions and get to know you and your work and your habits better to better serve you. This is actually a feature. You can turn it on and off. Again, we'll show that once we get into those details. But this persistent memory is definitely becoming a big advantage for the latest models. Peter, Kris, did you have anything to add on sort of like the state of models today?
KK, you're muted.
Embarrassing. I spend every day on Zoom and that kind of stuff still happens. Yes, I'm still like constantly playing the models off each other to figure out, where they shine. And so I'm often like having Chat GPT write good prompts for me and then taking them over into Anthropic and then running them inside Claude and then running those answers back by GPT and stuff and going back and forth between the two is I find a great way to really like make the most out of the areas where they're both stronger. So that's a big thing that I'm doing is playing AI models against each other.
Nice. Yeah, and one thing I would add, just even if you only have free accounts on each of these services, be sure you have accounts on each because we're going to jump back and forth between doing things with ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini. I should have mentioned that. Those are probably the three services that are going to feature quite a bit in the course. Peter, do you want to say a word or two about vibe coding?
Yeah, it's really hard to kind of overstate how transformative it is to have the ability to suddenly kind of create anything imaginable as an online product, service, not just websites, but apps, entire platforms. There definitely is a learning curve here, but yeah, there's so much that's sort of democratized when it comes to online design and communications and having the ability to really in real time prototype and work with a creative team. And in some cases, be able to move much faster, give designs over to actual designers with much higher fidelity and accuracy in terms of like the briefing. There's custom dashboarding, which is on here. There's so many cool ways to, yeah, utilize vibe coding, and we'll talk about what that means. Really, it's sort of having natural language prompting as the interface to build anything, right? Kind of
Nice.
imaginable. And so you can speak into existence things that you might not have even really ever considered or thought like you had a shot at, right? Or even a year or two ago, you might have needed to hire an entire team of designers and developers, right? And now you can get really far down that process, or in some cases, replace, some of that needed external labor and time. And so it's obviously having a lot of impacts in the workplace in one area.
Nice. Yeah, that's going to be an exciting chapter. We saved that for the end. Kind of saved the best for last. in a sense. But we're also going to be talking about agents in the course, and also just kind of working agentically. If you you'll sort of know what that is once you start doing it. But the whole thing about agents is that it's giving AI sort of a higher position in sort of the task hierarchy. Like rather than just giving it an individual task, which you typically would do like in a chat window, you'd ask it, "Hey, write this thing for me," and then you take it and you paste it and do something with it. An agent would be something that you could give a broader goal of like, hey, I need you to say, manage this social media account or something like that, and then give it some parameters around that, and it would essentially do that and continually do like given that goal, it'll keep working, potentially even spinning up sort of smaller AIs or agents to help it do it, and then won't stop until it sort of encounters a wall that needs a human to deal with, or it's just done. Um, we're going to talk a bit about Claude Code and Claude Cowork in the agent chapter, and it's kind of made this is one of the sort of apps from the past few months that has made this agentic workflows available to everybody. You might have heard of OpenClaw. It's a little beyond the scope of this course, but it's a really interesting way to apply agents in an open source kind of way. Basically, it enables anyone to create their own virtual workers, and you would give it sort of provision it just like a regular worker, and it would sort of have whatever level of access you give it, and it could just go off and do things like I mentioned, managing social media, content publishing, etc. Obviously, with this kind of access that you'd be giving agents or agentic tasks, there is an increased amount of risk, right? Which is why agents haven't actually spread everywhere really quickly. There's a lot of folks trying to figure out the security of these things so that if you do give them this level of access to whatever parts of your life or your software platform, that it can do that safely and hopefully won't delete all your email, which has happened to a couple folks that have sort of used these things in ways that maybe they shouldn't have been. But nonetheless, agents, despite those risks, we're figuring them out. And it's really a life-changing thing once you start working agentically. So we're really excited to show you that. Cool. Before we get to any of that, though, let's talk a little bit about ethics. And like I said, those hard questions around AI, which are good to think about. So I think ethics certainly start with having very legitimate concerns about AI, and I'm sure uh, you've heard of most of these, but we're going to talk about them and sort of how ethics and policy can deal with them. And so, again, I think this is very important that this is not a comprehensive list of concerns about AI, but these are in terms of work and in particular comms work, the things that sort of come up probably the most often. Number one here is hallucinations. I'm sure you've all heard of these. This is essentially when an AI ostensibly gets confused, but gets something wrong, something factual, in fact, and it might even state that falsehood with real confidence. Sometimes it's about something surprising, like, for example, the other day, I had an AI tell me it couldn't read a web page when I knew it could because it had just done so like about 5 minutes earlier in the conversation. So sometimes it gets things wrong about even its own capabilities, which is interesting and frustrating. Um, and the next is obviously privacy. It comes up every single time I have a class like this. Privacy is probably the biggest concern in terms of what folks really worry about in terms of comms work, PR work, and almost any work. Just because every company has proprietary data, and in the case of a lot of communications work, client data, and you want to make sure that that data is secure, that concerns about it, particularly whether or not it's used to retrain a model, are those legit concerns, and how do you, of course, they're legit concerns, but how do you mitigate them? And then there's bias and sycophancy, which are technically different things, but I put them in here sort of together because they're very related and produce similar problems. Humans created AI, and humans are flawed. Humans have biases. There's bias in data sets. Certainly, even internet data broadly is something that tends to skew Western and English speaking. And so you have to keep this in mind, and if you can, mitigate it with how you use AI. In addition, AI is made to please you. It's made to satisfy whatever you put in the prompt. And that's its own bias. And so what this does is, if you have ideas that you really want to stress test, that you want some critical feedback on, by default, AI typically doesn't do that. It's usually going to reinforce whatever you tell it. That said, you can, in a way similar to bias, tell it to mitigate that and take a different stance and maybe be more critical. And then there's copyright, which has gotten a lot of press over the last couple of years. I've covered this pretty extensively in my newsletter. The training sets that train AI are usually private data that they've harvested. In addition to that, to access current data, when they access current data, which is essential, you don't just want AI to behave as it with the knowledge of the world from 5 or 6 months ago, which is usually about the cadence of how often they're trained. It needs to access current data, and that also has some copyright implications. Okay, so in terms of what to consider and how to mitigate something like hallucinations, let's talk about that specifically. So hallucinations are a big reason why the term human in the loop became very popular and is still, bandied about today. I mean, especially for anything that is crucial, so something public facing or client facing, obviously you can't just take raw AI outputs and just have them go. Um, Anything that is crucial to the output, even internally that you're relying on, has to be checked. This leads to what you might call, and sometimes called, a verification layer on AI outputs. Like, AI can create content all day. It can create 200-page research reports, and that's amazing. It's just once you have something like that, you need to have someone actually check that. A human has to look at it and make sure it's solid, and then correct things that aren't solid. So those efficiencies that AI creates aren't necessarily infinite out of the box. In fact, they're always sort of faced with this bottleneck of humans needing to check anything crucial that comes out of them. The different types of tools have different kinds of risk. So I mentioned checking things on the internet that are more recent than things in training data. That's technically something called RAG, which is like a terrible acronym that stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. But generally, depending on how big the data set is, that sort of process is a little less risky than getting stuff out of training data. There are things called grounded tools, which explicitly don't look at their training data or the internet, which also helps. So understanding that how those tools will reduce your risk of hallucinations is very helpful. And again, you have to watch out for automation bias in any of these. So like any workflow where you have an AI output, you just have to think about it. You have to sort of think, well, where is the human needed here? It's fine to have things automatically do other things and outputs to go from one app to another. But without humans in the loop, you have to be very considered of how certain errors might propagate through those systems. So just watch out for that. Okay, so we can talk a little bit about copyright as you think about sort of what's ethically okay to use, and also not just like the service to use, but the outputs you can use. This type of consideration might change, for example, between text and images. So you might have a little more nuanced policy for one or the other. A lot of these AIs can not necessarily, um, well, they can copy things, but it's also like they can copy the style of someone's writing or the style of someone's images. And you have to think about like whether that is the right something good to something okay to do. Again, depending on your use case, which is the second bullet here. Like, how are you going to use it? Is it internally? Are you doing images just for inspiration, or is it something that's going to be public facing or client facing? Um, what's the vendor type? Like, does it build foundation models? Those are the ones that are typically the target of these copyright lawsuits. Has they said something publicly about what their policy is around inputs? So, for example, Adobe, which puts out um, its own AI model in Firefly, they make sure that all of the images that fuel that model are either in the public domain or they have licensed. So, they advertise this as brand safe since it obviously reduces the chance of a lawsuit greatly. Um, but does that mean you never use Midjourney or you only use it for certain use cases? Again, some stuff to think about in terms of images. And then as you think about this, like what's your worst case scenario? Like some of these vendors will provide legal protections, and I'm pretty sure OpenAI does, particularly around text outputs. And then even if with those legal protections, though, are there risks reputationally in terms of using this, particularly if you use them a lot? Again, the risk might change depending on the kind of output that you're asking for. And then finally, like bias and sycophancy, as you consider these, again, these are kind of like things that are very difficult to weed out of a model um at the core. So you kind of need to assume there's bias from the start. Um, and I think the key thing here is the third bullet, which is like, how are you going to mitigate it? And I think the important thing to understand is, you have agency over what you say to the AI and how you want it to frame answers. So if you suspect bias, tell it you do and give it guidance on how to mitigate that. Same thing with sycophancy. Being very explicit about wanting critical feedback on outputs when you need it will help considerably. And then privacy, as whether you're in media or PR, the protecting sensitive information is super important. I'll address the elephant in the room here on data leaks. This is the biggest concern, I think, that if you are using an AI, it needs to it'll harvest your information, put it back into training, and therefore it could kind of leak out at some point. The leaking out of it is probably less likely than it was at any time in AI's life. That said, yes, if you leave this feature on and it will show you how to turn it off, um, your data will be put back into training data. That said, everyone can turn it off. And if you are using an enterprise account or a business software that uses these models, it won't retain your data by default. This is mostly a concern for individuals and individual accounts. And again, everyone can turn it off, even if you have a free account. That said, all of this stuff exists in the cloud. Hacks do happen. So nothing's completely secure. Treat any AI model and a service as something that could be hacked or any other digital platform you're using. And finally, keep in mind that whatever you're putting out there in the cloud could be the people who are running that service could be compelled to provide that data potentially through a legal process, or even if it's not, like they have access, the vendor has access to it. So keep in mind all of that. Also, like consider that as you get those dialog boxes that ask you if you want to share data to improve the service, for example. Be very cautious of those. Cool. So that's the main concerns around AI and particularly in the use of in PR and comms. And and some ways to mitigate and think about those dangers. Before we go to the this examples of AI policy, I'd love to pause there for just a minute and see if this any of those particular concerns resonated with y'all, or if there are other concerns that you have about it that aren't reflected here. Just opening it up to the class or for questions and comments about concerns about AI.
Dan.
I mean, yeah, the copyright, concerns. I'm an author. My book was actually stolen by Anthropic, and I ended up getting some money for it. It was to train Claude, but I'm still using Claude. So, and just inside of what my last position, Springer Nation, there are policies against using AI generated images, and very strict policies. This is premier brands, and so. I've been listening to that dialogue internally for a couple of years, and now I'm out on my own. So copyright concerns are front and center for me.
Yeah, totally. Why I sort of often focus on images when I talk about that, because it is such a different kind of animal than text. I don't quite really know why, but it is. And I know that a lot of newsrooms and a lot of content operations will forbid the idea of, like, say, creating an image in someone's style, just because that just seems like it's closer to outright theft than other uses. Yeah, big concerns. Again, I think the point is, like, trying to figure out your personal ethics in such a way that you respect it and but still don't handicap yourself in terms of the use of AI. Find the ways that are thoughtful and respectful of copyright. Oh, Allison.
Yeah, I just wanted to add the privacy element is very relevant to me. Inside our org, we're limited to the tools that we can use. So there's my professional life in AI, and then my personal life. And it's really hard to move a large company, if you can imagine. It's really hard to convince which tools are, I guess, deemed safe and secure, and I've become more educated on SOC 2 compliance than I ever thought I ever would.
Nice.
But it's still a big hurdle that I don't think we've surmounted.
Yeah, privacy is one of the toughest ones. It's a to some extent, once you're using AI, it does require a certain amount of self policing and self discipline. I think by doing trainings like this one and getting them even narrower and narrower, I've done very specific things around, like, specific uses of AI assistance, which we're going to talk about next week in terms of ways to craft prompting to give yourself a lot of different checks to make sure it's not you're not violating anything, but also freeing you up to um, to do it when you need it, right? Because the thing is, as we're going to talk a lot about next week, context matters a lot when you're using AI, and the more data it has, the better job it's going to do. It's just a matter of figuring out how to do that safely. Cool. Anything else? Any other questions? All right. So let's go into AI policy a little bit, and we're going to spend a couple minutes on this, and then we're going to do a bit of an exercise. So we have here uh, some public-facing AI policies from various PR firms, and we'll share these. Um, we'll share these with you all in the chat, or I think there might be on the exercise sheet. Either way, you'll get them. And so, I can click around on some of these, and so there's one here, this PR Agency One policy. And some of them are longer than this, but none of them need to be. None of them are super long. And we've checked them out, and we you can find certain through lines. And so one of the big ones in many policies, and this is key, is disclosure. So all of these firms have a certain amount of transparency that's required in their use. Um, whether that's something they do for clients or things they notify, their the people in the press they liaise with, and just sort of the public acknowledgement that AI was used in certain types of content creation. Very important. They all sort of specify human oversight being essential. That fact checking, final approval, et cetera, all of that is necessary in any AI process where the outputs are crucial. And then there's a thing that's actually gotten more and more common, I would say, in the last 6 months, um, where environmental responsibility. So these macro factors, which we didn't talk about earlier, but are certainly out there. So the idea of AI, the more you use it or the way you use it, can greatly can affect the amount of compute that you use broadly. And, obviously the industry is building lots of data centers, it's consuming electricity, it's consuming water. Again, a lot of this is beyond the scope of this course, but it'd be silly to pretend this isn't a broader concern, both at the community level and then at the company level. Um, Other macro things you might think about, is jobs and organizational structure around the use of AI once you start really integrating it. A lot of places are out ahead. These are probably some of the more forward-looking ones because in addition to having an AI policy, they've put it out publicly, which is a little rare in the PR world. It's much more common in the media world that they have public-facing policies. But it gives you an idea of like once you start applying AI and building it into your organization, you need to confront these things and often to some extent in a public kind of way. So gives you some guidance there. We're going to move on here to a little bit of a cheat sheet. Again, we've looked at all the AI policies out there, so you don't have to as much. Again, a lot of you probably have AI policies. Honestly, actually, I'd love it if you guys could share in the chat if where you work or where you worked had an AI policy that had at least a few of these sections, like a yes or no would be great. But these are kind of like what in most AI policies that we've seen that are effective, they address all of these in some way. Like obviously, number one, what's the purpose and the scope of the policy? What are your permitted uses, your prohibited uses, disclosure, very, very like it's almost everything, like what is labeled, both to internal folks and external folks. What's the human accountability in whatever loop it is, like, so where is the human in the loop? And not just where they are, but also like emphasizing that humans are ultimately responsible. AI can't be responsible for anything just by its nature. So blaming the AI for a bad output is just not a thing any policy should allow. And then there's, the verification and accuracy. That's the real human in the loop. What are the steps that are created? And not just human in the loop, I should say. Like there are ways to apply AI and things like fact checking that can basically increase the amount of things you can filter out in terms of bad content and errors, but doesn't negate the need for human in the loop. And then, like we already just talked about, like the macro factors, the organizational, societal impact, things like environmental issues, jobs. And then finally, but probably even most importantly, is the governance of this thing. How is this framework created? How is it maintained? And where does ultimately the buck stop in whatever AI policy you have? Again, shouldn't be a machine. Should be a human. So that's those are your main things on policy. Thanks for, oh, look at this. Oh, that's from Kris. Some policy stuff. Thanks for that, Kris. Okay, we're going to jump to the exercise. We got about 20 minutes left. So this is great. We're going to actually spin you all out into some Zoom breakout rooms. And each of you are going to deal with essentially a fictional ethical scenario here. So basically your group, you should discuss it. Think about how you're going to address it. And, we have a template for you. So you're basically just going to look at, like I showed you, the policy, the section. So the 8 different sections of a policy. You're going to figure out like which are the sections that are that are involved in the exercise. You're basically in one sentence, because we don't want to spend too much time on this. What is your preferred action? What do you want to do? And then what's a rule that would govern that action? Again, just a sentence is fine. And then just an explanation why. And then if you think there are exceptions to whatever rule you have come up with, point them out. So very simple. You got a dilemma, quick action, what's the rule, and why. Here's what the exercise looks like. I'm going to pass this over to all of you. You got all these different scenarios, something with a crisis statement, proof points that came from AI, a synthetic spokesperson, personalized outreach. These are all kind of interesting and kind of fun.
Yeah, sharing this doc in the chat right now.
Thank you. So, and yeah, can you also spin up those breakout rooms, Peter? And then we can.
Yeah, they are ready to go. So, any questions before we break folks out for about 10 minutes or so here? Some discussions. All right. Well, I'm going to open the rooms here. I'll pop around a bit, but we will see you back in about 10 minutes and have a wider discussion then. Is everyone back? No. Maybe. Welcome back. How did it go? Does anyone want to share a little bit of the discussion in their group? What came up for you guys? Any takers?
Who had the synthetic spokesperson? That's always a fun one. Come on, raise your hand. Did nobody do that one? Oh, there you go. Dan.
I'm sorry, we didn't do that one. We did a
Oh,
different
okay. What did you do?
We did scenario 4.
Oh yeah.
Was basically pitching with context that was from like public records and things like that, in addition to what was said publicly. So pretty much all of the policy sections were involved. All of the items in that slide, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, you could have a policy. That's what we thought. And this is Sarah and I. So to give credit to the great mind in the group, that would be Sarah. So we write your preferred action in one sentence. We want to immediately stop using or downloading any of that private data. So we're making the distinction private and so the rule would be use only what's intended for public consumption, created by or with the express permission of the journalist, because you're pitching a journalist and you don't want to creep them out. Basically, that's my editorial addition there. And give a short explanation why this is needed. Point out potential exceptions, if any. So protecting and respecting the privacy rights of individual journalists, number one, and secondarily, your own reputation as a PR person.
Nice, that makes sense. So are you making a distinction between private and public? Because as the scenario is worded, it seems like most of the stuff that is scraped is public, right? So
the distinction is between what's intended for public consumption. A social post and a social post, like we said, organizational social post, yes. Personal social posts, I guess, is harder to say.
Right.
Right. But newsletters for sure. You're out on a podcast, yeah, you can, sure, why not? If you're intending to the journalist intending to put it out there for public consumption, sure. Public records, hell
no. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you have anything to add? You had a lot of contributions.
No, you just summarized it right. I could just see this. There's a really strong business case to be made for not doing this too. It will come back and bite you so fast. But there are also so many examples of publications. Like I work on my college alumni magazine, and they used to be just like promiscuous in the amount of information that was out there for just the general public to read. And they've really cracked down on that, but not everybody has. So it's just it just makes people feel stalked.
Yeah, you want to avoid that for sure.
Mm.
Nice. Anyone else want to jump in on their scenario? Should we pick someone?
Were there any relatable moments that were also kind of illuminating in terms of, yeah, this is maybe happening at our company or things like that? I see a head nod from Michelle. Can I
Well,
put
I
you on
just
the spot?
yeah, I mean we also had chosen scenario 4, but I'm just nodding my head because when in my last role, I mean, we definitely were using AI to help not only like craft pitches based on the type, like the writings of reporters, like what are all the articles they've written, what are the angles they take on their articles, like, and then the preparation of what are the anticipated questions that will be asked as you prep the executives. And so it's a little bit of a spin on this in terms of like uh, taking what is public information and then using AI to not just have like a very generic Q&A, which is what you might do in the PR in the past, because it'd be like one Q&A for everything, but now you can individually tailor every Q&A for each reporter because you are able to go and say, pull all the writing from each one and then tell me what are the anticipated types of questions based on that person's writing. And that would have taken a million years to do just a few years ago, but now it's really easy with AI.
Right.
Yeah, totally. And I think you're honing in on something like, capability that just because you could doesn't mean you should, that sort of stuff's obvious. But also like we're not here to like tell you what is the right way to use this. This is hopefully giving you a good framework on how to think about that and figure it out for each of yourselves and your teams, right? That it's perfectly defensible position to come at this scenario and go like, that we did nothing wrong, you know what I mean? Like, or just say like, well, maybe there's a creepiness that we could have avoided, but the overall practice of building a dossier on someone or generally helping shape a pitch based on what they've put out there publicly. I mean, that's very common pre-AI, right? So, like, what's the balance here? When is it over the line? Just because you have more capabilities, that's a moving target. Cool. Anyone have scenario 1 or 2 before we close things up? I'm just curious if you want to add just a little more color. Everyone do scenario 4?
We did scenario 1.
Who did scenario 1? Sorry, who was that?
Sorry, I was gonna say we did scenario 1 in our group.
Yeah, go for it.
And I think so that's one where they want to make a urgent crisis statement, and they decide it's a good idea to use some notes which include early unverified details and names. So we talked about the kind of privacy issues and sharing things that included confidential or personal data. And it felt like it crossed lots of different kind of policy sections. And we had an interesting discussion about that.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear. What do you think was the main policy line it crossed?
Well, so we were talking about what the rules should, so it covered disclosure and labeling, human accountability, and potentially verification and accuracy.
All right. Yeah, all of that.
And we were saying that really you shouldn't do it, but maybe the rule is to like not use personal information when creating these statements.
Yeah. Not a bad rule.
That's one approach, yeah,
Sweet.
for sure.
So I'm glad you all had some practice on thinking about these decisions and these dilemmas because that's your homework. And now you got to do this on a task you actually do, not just some fictional scenario. So think about things you're actually doing. And again, we want to focus this on like a specific task, like something you could do, and then think about like what are the policy sections that would govern that. And then within that section, think about a rule that would be, the rule to help that's very specific to that task. And then again, a good red flag list. What are the 3 things that you might escalate the situation? And yeah, and then away you go. We really want these homework exercises not to take up too much of your time. I think this probably shouldn't take you more than 15 minutes sometime between now and the next class. We will be calling on people, by the way, specific people to talk about their homework in the next class. So please take some time to do it. And yeah, let it hit us with any questions in between now and then if you have any. And we'll looking forward to seeing you in the next class.
I highly recommend that documentary that I just dropped on the chat. If you haven't already seen it, it's by Tristan Harris, who did the Social Dilemma documentary a couple years back, and just came out in the last couple weeks, and it's on exactly these topics that we're talking about here.
Thank you.
Good deal.
Thanks,
All right, guys.
everyone.
Thanks, you
We'll
all.
see you next
We'll
week.
see you again soon.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.